kingdom again, but it didn't last very long because in 1939, Mussolini's forces invaded Albania, and it was followed shortly after by German forces also. Okay, between 1941 and 1944, communist partisans aided the Albanian people in fighting off the German and Italian invaders, and they were successful in doing so in 1944. Immediately after, Albania became a communist nation, and that's very important because what I'm going to share with you right now is a lot of what shapes the current mindset over there. Okay. After years of turmoil, there were two primary leaders that arose. One was Enver Hoxha. I know it wasn't Hoxha, but it's pronounced Hoxha. And Mehmet Shehu. They were the two dominant figures, with Hoxha ultimately becoming the primary leader of Albania. And he was very much influenced by Stalinism and shaped Albania in accordance with Stalinism. Okay, in 1945, he passed a law called the Agrarian Reform Law, and basically what this said was that that all religious institutions of any kind had to, quote, comply with the laws of the state, law and order, and good customs, and that they submit all appointments, regulations, and bylaws for the approval of the government. Anything that any church or any religious institution did had to be approved directly by the government. Even if like a pastor wanted to write a letter to someone, it had to be shown to the government to see if that was okay. And if anyone did anything outside of that government control, many were tortured, imprisoned, or even executed. It was a lot of religious persecution that began in this time. Not just, well, if there were any Christians there, not with just Christians, but of all religions. Enver Hoxha hated God, and his primary thing that he wanted to do was to totally eradicate religion from Albania, and he was successful in doing so. We're going to talk about that. In the late 60s, he was inspired by China's Cultural Revolution, and he called for the youth. He gave them power to struggle against what he called religious superstition, and basically he encouraged them to take over the nation and turn it into a secular nation, which they succeeded in doing so. Any churches or mosques or anything like that were all confiscated and turned into cultural centers of learning for the youth. And in essence, they created the first atheist state. And during this time, there was much religious persecution going on. I read of one, I mean, there was a lot more stuff than this that happened, but I read of one story where a Jesuit priest was given life in prison just because he baptized his nephew. And so anyway, that's the kind of stuff that was going on. And they made it official in 1976, I believe. Let me check my notes here. Yeah, 1976, they made it official in their constitution, and religion was officially banned. And anyone who even had a religious name of any kind had to change their name to one that fell in line with the government's vision of the nation. Now, it was like that until 1991. That's pretty recent. In 1991, that's whenever the Constitution was changed and religion was allowed back in. Now, there were a lot of people that practiced secretly, but it was made official that they could practice it again in 1991. And this is about the time that Joe Horning first went over there, right around this time. Okay. At that time, there was an inflow of many different religions that sent missionaries. And so, I shared all that basically so you can have a better picture of what has shaped the current mindset and spiritual condition over there. And I felt like I had to share that with you because I don't think that you would really understand it any other way unless you saw at least a general flow of the history of it and what led to this point, what shaped their mentalities. So basically this is an area that was evangelized by the Apostle Paul, and they turned their back on the true gospel for false religion. So, and it's been like that for nearly 2,000 years. There's a lot of hardening of hearts because of that. As I said, there are spiritual strongholds because they turned to false religion, and they've been in place for thousands of years, and Satan certainly does not want to give up those strongholds. He's going to fight hard against that. I know that he hates Joe and Ron being there and the other missionaries there, and I know that he hates that I'm going. And so another reason I wanted to share all these things with you is because I want you to pray for me. so I need your prayers. I really do. So there's been spiritual strongholds there for thousands of years. And it's still a very secular society from years of state atheism. I don't know if y'all know this or not, but Albania is the only nation in all of human history to officially become an atheist state. There's a lot of places that were against religion and that hated religion and persecuted people for it, but they're the only ones to officially become an atheist state. And that still influences the mentality of a lot of people there. They're still very secular. And even the ones that are religious, to this day, they're just like the people from way back. You know, they're more religious for cultural reasons than doctrinal. They don't really know the difference between, you know, the different religions. They just pick one. And then if you try to talk to them, I was talking to Joe about this yesterday, and he was telling me how a lot of them, they've had this going on for so long, especially people that are in the Orthodoxy, or really even Muslims, but people that are into Orthodoxy and things like that, they're like, well, we resisted Islam and these other religions for so long, and it's been, you know, in our family and their culture for hundreds of years, so why should we change now? You know, who are you to tell us that what we believe isn't the right thing? That's what you believe, but who are you to say? You know, you weren't here when they were translating the Bible into our language. You know, how can you say that they're wrong and you're right? And there's that kind of a mentality against the gospel there. And so anyway, that pretty much shapes the people there, and that's a good idea of the spiritual environment that they minister in. And as I was studying the history of the area and learning more about the mentality there, I really got a deeper appreciation for what Joe and Rhonda have to minister in there. It's a very tough environment, and they have a lot of, you know, not physical persecution, but they're persecuted especially by Muslims because they don't like people who are not Muslims. And so anyway, that should give you a pretty good idea of the area. All right, now I'll be staying with Joe and Rhonda Horning and their family in Ulcin, Montenegro. There's the picture up there, a picture of Joe and Rhonda and their family in the corner. There in Ulcin, there's two primary beaches that people from the surrounding areas come to, different nations like Serbia, Bosnia, Croatia, and places like that. They come to this beach during the summertime, and that's part of why I'm going when I'm going. It's kind of strategic. We want to be able to reach people from the surrounding nations as well. We're going to be doing different outreaches in this area, like youth ministry. We're going to try to set up a stage on the beach and play music to draw a crowd, and then when they're there, give them the gospel, and just kind of go out and mingle with people, talk to people, and just try to witness to as many people as we can. Because keep in mind that there is no church in this area. You know, it's a lot different than, you know, like when we go to Peru, we go out with the church there, and you know, there's a lot more people who are a lot more receptive to the gospel. Here, there is no church, and there's strongholds that have been in place for thousands of years, and so it's all grassroots, you know, groundwork, evangelism stuff. And the only Christians in this area are Joe and Rhonda, a couple German missionaries, and a few converts that they have made over the last couple of years that meet in their home. But they have won some people to the Lord, but it's very few, and there's no established church in the area. And that's one thing that they're in the process of doing right now. And I count it as a high honor and privilege to go there to help in any way I can. I mean, I don't know exactly what all God has for me there, but I'm just kind of going saying, you know, use me any way you want. And I'm almost finished here. We're also going into northern Albania. I wanted to show you just these few pics. The three bigger ones are people that Joe has had the chance to minister to over there. I just want you to see some faces. And I was online, the one in the right corner there, I was online looking at different pictures from Albania and different people. And this is an old man, an old Albanian man. And it just struck me as kind of a powerful image because I feel like it's very symbolic of the spiritual hopelessness of most of the people in that area. And, you know, that's pretty much what that is, what this missions trip is all about. Going there to reach those who are lost, who haven't heard, and just help out in any way that I can.